Hello. Hello? Oh, people. Thank you. I feel like a children's magician. So, I have a memory of something that very probably didn't happen. It's one of my earliest memories of my father doing a magic trick and a nursery rhyme at the same time. I've asked my dad about it. He doesn't remember doing it at all. It could be my faulty memory. It could be his faulty memory. It could be that it was my grandfather, who also liked tricks. It could be one of our neighbours. But I've spent a lot of my life doing two things, trying to find that trick. So I've searched magic books, trying to find that particular trick, and failing. And I've spent a lot of my life trying to get that particular feeling back that I had when he did that trick at a very early age. I'm going to show you a little trick, a very simple trick, that is the closest I can come to showing you the trick that my father did. I haven't been able to find the trick that he did. Two little dicky birds sitting on the wall. One named Peter, one named Paul. Fly away, Peter. Fly away, Paul. Come back, Peter. Come back, Paul. So, this is my father coming second in a hot pants competition. The guy second in with a moustache came first. My dad was gutted by that. My dad isn't a magician, was never a magician, likes magic tricks, likes hoaxes, likes pub tricks, likes teasing, but never professionally. And what I remember about seeing that trick when I was young was how physically it hit me. It was very close up, and you may have got a little touch of that. There's a feeling that you get when you see close-up magic where you almost feel ill. I've had people say I feel ill after seeing me do magic. But you feel a little shift. Your breath stops for a moment. Your mouth drops open sometimes. And it feels as though the ground is shifting underneath you. And it's that particular feeling that I wanted to explore. I'm actually more interested in what magic feels like than how magic works. But I'm going to talk for the rest of my time about how magic works to get to that point of why magic feels the way that it does. So I'm going to do that by telling another little nursery story. Once upon a time, there was a fat, lazy hen and a lean, hungry fox. And every night the lean, hungry fox would sneak into the barn, hoping to find the hen moving around. But every night the hen would be lazily up in the rafters of the barn, looking down. And the fox would get frustrated and run round and round in circles with frustration and anger, wanting to eat the hen. Every night the fox would run faster and faster, round and round in circles, and the hen would sit perfectly still, watching the fox. Until one night the fox ran round and round and round, faster and tighter for so long that the hen got dizzy, fell from the rafters, and was dinner for the fox. Now that charming little story is actually more complicated than you might think. That question of why does the hen fall from the rafters is very important. I'm very careful to say that the hen sits perfectly still It isn't because the hen is moving her head watching. It's something much more interesting in terms of cognitive science, why the hen falls. Because if we watch somebody doing something, we copy on a very small level the movements of that person. If we watch somebody do something, our mirror neurons, in a sense, copy what their brain is doing. And our ideomotor system, our very small muscle movements, copy physically what they're doing. This is the basis of learning. This is why if you watch boxing, you'll make little boxy moves. And even if you think you're sitting perfectly still, your body will be making very tiny little movements. So I want to illustrate this to you by having you feel this. You'll have noticed that you've got paper clips. If you can take those paper clips out, dangle them in front of you, you've created one of the oldest magical devices that we know of, the pendulum. And taking this as seriously as you can, hold the pendulum out, look at the end of the pendulum, and imagine as clearly as you can that pendulum moving. Don't move the pendulum with your hand, but don't stop the pendulum moving either, and just picture as clearly as you can that pendulum moving. And I can see lots of pendulums moving already, and what I can see are laughing faces, because you're getting that really odd feeling. I've asked lots and lots of people what it's like, and I get one of two things. People either say, it's like there's no connection between cause and effect. My brain is telling the pendulum to move, but my hand isn't moving. It's as though I've got some kind of power. Other people describe the feeling as though something is operating through me. Something's operating through my body, making that pendulum move. And you can make that pendulum move in circles, you can stop it dead, you can move it back and forth. Now, the ancients thought the pendulum was a way of communicating with the gods. The Victorians thought that the pendulum was a way of communicating with the spirits. There's some interesting cognitive science behind it. Those micro-muscle movements don't just happen when you see other movements happening, they happen when you imagine those movements happening. So I've done a lot of work with sport coaches and deception. And one thing I've learned is that if you play tennis and you want to improve your serve, and you're tired from a day physically practicing the serve, one thing you can do is just sit and imagine that serve. And it isn't just your brain doing that imagining, it's your body and the small muscle movements literally practicing that serve. So, since last October, I've been magician in residence at the Pervasive Media Studio in Bristol, where I've been working with technologists there and with Bristol University, with the Computer Science and Engineering Department, to explore the ideomotor response and how we can measure it, how we can use it for new forms of interfaces, for new forms of games, and for new forms of magic tricks. This is a picture of IdeoBird. IdeoBird was one of the first devices we made. This is IdeoBird disconnected from some of its apparatus. And what IdeoBird does is measure very small movements in your hand in order to perform magic effects where the bird can know which object you're thinking of. What I want to talk to you more in depth about today is how we started to measure the skill of being able to allow ideomotor response to work through you, and some of the experiments we did with that. So we decided to forget for a moment about the subconscious nature of the ideomotor response and to just see whether we could play with a pendulum on a table with a simple game. So we hung a pendulum with a magnet on the end above a Hall effect sensor, and we measured the swing of the pendulum. Then we fed that through an Arduino. We plugged into that Arduino the feed from a force-sensitive resistor on the end of the table. So we made a very simple game. The game is push the table to make the pendulum swing. And that's a fairly rubbish game. So we added a rule. The rule is we take that swing and we divide it by the force that you're putting into the table. So if you put too much force in, you can get the pendulum swinging okay, but you're not scoring a very high ideomotor quotient. It's like when you push somebody on a swing. If you push when the swing's coming towards you, you're just wasting energy. If you push when the swing's going away from you, that's the right time, but if you push too hard, you can waste energy. So that ability to be good at pushing people on swings is in part what we're measuring, except this system is slightly more complex. We're not pushing the swing, we're pushing the ground underneath the swing. Now, when we first set this up, it took us about 20 minutes. I sat down and played it. One thing we noticed immediately is that it's a really playable game for a very simple dumb game, because you have to watch the pendulum, and so you beam into it. You zone into it really quite quickly. But I scored 15, tried again, scored 16, tried again, scored 15. 15 watt. We hadn't calibrated anything at this point, so we had no idea. And I just thought, it's broken. I don't know what we're measuring. It's just 15, 16 every time, it doesn't work. Pete Bennett, who helped me make this, sat down, played it, scored 26. So I tried it again, 15 again, he tried it again, 27. So we thought we're measuring something that's consistent in us, but different. So we dragged a few more people over, and we kept getting this result. People scoring consistent scores, but different from each other. Steve came over. Now, Steve is really good at maths, really good at physics, one of those big brains. And he stood and watched it for about 20 minutes, and then went, got it. Sat down, 2. Because what he tried to do is work out the system and then apply some kind of rule to it, irrespective of what was actually happening in the system as he was playing it. And he can't not do that. Every time he plays, he scores 2 or 3. I think Pete is good because he makes musical instruments and plays trombone. People we've measured who are good tend to be musicians, actors, people who do a lot of sport. I have my suspicions that if we measured people who ride horses or people who sail, they would get high scores, because they are people who are used to resonating with the world. When we're being fancy and academic, we talk about this as a resonance-based interface. When we're not, we call them wobbly interfaces. And the world is full of wobbly interfaces. So we packaged this down into what I now call IdeoBird. So IdeoBird in some ways works like a Ouija board. We've made it 2-player, so you can, one person can have a go, another person can have a go, and we can put a number to it. We can put a score and make it playable. So this is a strange device. This is a combination of a genuine scientific experiment to see if we can measure the skill of this. It's a game, but it's also a stage device. So in a longer show, I will use this device and have people up and measure their ideomotor responses, and then do other things with them using ideomotor response. Which brings me all the way back round to this trick. Cognitive scientists talk about something called common coding. A very simple idea that the brain isn't compartmentalized into this bit always does this thing and nothing else, and this bit always does that thing and nothing else. Many of the things we do are commonly coded into the brain. So doing something, watching somebody else do something, like hen watching fox, or thinking about something happening, like you did with the pendulums and you felt with the pendulums. Those can be all coded into the same part of the brain, which is why we can get interesting illusions as we get overlap in those actions. One of my favorite definitions of a magic effect is that's fair, that's fair, that's fair, what just happened? Right? Without that's fair, that's fair, that's fair, you just have surprise. Surprise is nice, but it's not magical. So if ideomotor response and mirror neurons are fundamental to how we learn things, and all the time when we watch people do things, we were always mirroring them, and our bodies are always copying, because we're always learning. When you watch a magician do something, they'll do an action, and your body will copy. They'll do another action, and your body will copy. Then the magician will do something that your body cannot copy. So you get what I refer to as uncommon coding. The gears of your ideomotor system grind, and you experience a phenomenological bump, where suddenly you're watching something that your body can't do. And that bump is a physical feeling. And for me, this is interesting in where we're at with cognitive science. We've spent too long in cognitive science being very obsessed with the brain. But in fact, consciousness is broader than the brain, not in a strange hippie sense, but just it happens more around the body than you might think. And for me, that, if you like, cognitive Pangea of bringing the body and the brain back together is something that I see happening a lot more in the future. You'll notice that a couple of my slides were the work of surrealist artists. I think the surrealists had something very right. The idea that there isn't that big separation between our subconscious and our unconscious as we might think, that it's actually all part of the same world. Thank you very much.